The days that followed my confrontation with Jason were some of the hardest I'd ever endured. I had made a decision, and I was determined to stick to it. If Jason couldn't or wouldn't give me what I needed, then I had to protect myself by pulling away. I couldn't keep waiting for him to change, for him to decide that I was worth more than a cold, distant marriage of convenience. So I did what I had to do. I ignored him. I stopped waiting up for him at night, stopped trying to engage him in conversation. I made myself scarce around the mansion, spending most of my time in the library or the gardens, places where I knew he wouldn't find me. And when we did cross paths, I kept my interactions with him as brief and as neutral as possible. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing how much he had hurt me, but as the days turned into weeks, I could feel the strain of my resolve. Each time I passed him in the hallway, without so much as a glance, each time I heard him come home late at night and resisted the urge to go to him, it chipped away at the walls I had so carefully constructed around my heart. I missed him, missed the arguments, the tension, even the cold silences that had once driven me mad. But I refused to let that weakness show. Jason, for his part, seemed to notice the change. At first, he appeared relieved, as if my decision to distance myself had taken a burden off his shoulders. But as the days wore on, I began to sense a shift in him. He became more irritable, more withdrawn, his temper flaring at the smallest things. I caught him watching me sometimes, a strange look in his eyes that I couldn't quite decipher. But whenever I met his gaze, he would quickly look away, as if ashamed of being caught. It was clear that my absence was affecting him, but he was too stubborn, too proud to admit it. Instead, he threw himself even further into his work, spending long hours in his study or at the office. And when he was home, he avoided me just as much as I avoided him, as if we were both playing a game neither of us knew how to win. But despite the cold distance between us, I could sense the tension building. It was like a coiled spring, wound too tight, ready to snap at any moment. And I knew that when it did, there would be no going back. One evening, after a particularly long day, I decided to treat myself to a hot bath. The warm water was soothing, easing the tension in my muscles and helping to clear my mind. I closed my eyes, letting the steam envelope me, and tried to relax. But no matter how hard I tried, my thoughts kept drifting back to Jason, to the way things had been before everything had fallen apart. Just as I was starting to drift off, I heard a knock on the bathroom door. My heart leaped into my throat, and I quickly pulled the bathrobe around me, standing up as the door creaked open. To my surprise, it was Jason. He stood there in the doorway, his expression unreadable, his eyes locked onto mine. For a moment, neither of us said anything, the air between us thick with unspoken words. My heart pounded in my chest, and I could feel the tension rising, that same tension that had been building for weeks. "Eve," he finally said, his voice low and rough. I tightened the robe around myself, trying to keep my composure. "What is it, Jason?" He hesitated, as if he was trying to find the right words, but then shook his head, his expression hardening. "We need to talk." I couldn't help but laugh, the sound bitter and hollow. "About what?" You've made it pretty clear that there's nothing left to say. He flinched at my words, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw a flicker of pain in his eyes. But then he straightened, his pride keeping him from backing down. I know you've been avoiding me, he said, his voice tight. And I understand why. But we can't keep doing this. I crossed my arms over my chest, trying to keep the anger from rising to the surface. You're the one who wanted this distance, Jason. You're the one who said you couldn't give me what I needed. So, why do you care now? His jaw clenched, and I could see the struggle in his eyes, the battle between his pride and whatever feelings he was trying so hard to suppress. I never said I didn't care, he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. My heart skipped a beat at his words, but I forced myself to stay calm, to keep the walls up. Then why are you here, Jason? Why now? He took a step closer, his gaze intense, but he stopped himself, as if he was afraid of crossing some invisible line. Because I miss you, Eve, he admitted, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. I miss you, and it's driving me insane. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The admission, so raw and unexpected, left me stunned. But as much as I wanted to believe him, to let myself hope that maybe he had changed, I couldn't ignore the pain he had caused me. Then why didn't you say anything sooner? I asked, my voice trembling. Why did you push me away? He ran a hand through his hair, his frustration evident. Because I didn't know how to deal with it, all right? I didn't know how to handle what I was feeling, so I thought it was better to keep my distance. But now I don't know anymore. I stared at him, my heart torn between the love I felt for him and the fear of getting hurt again. I can't keep doing this, Jason, I whispered. I can't keep waiting for you to decide whether or not you want me in your life. His eyes softened, and for the first time, I saw something close to vulnerability in his expression. I know I've been an ass, he said quietly. But the truth is, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to let someone in. His words cut deep, and I felt a tear slip down my cheek before I could stop it. Then maybe you should let me go, I said, my voice breaking. Because I can't keep holding on to something that isn't real. He stepped closer, his hand reaching out as if to touch me, but then he hesitated, dropping it to his side. I don't want to let you go, Eve, he said, his voice thick with emotion. But I don't know how to give you what you deserve. I looked up at him, my heart aching with the weight of his words. Then you need to figure it out, Jason, I said softly, because I'm done waiting. For a long moment, we just stood there, the silence between us heavy with everything we couldn't say. But then he nodded, a look of determination settling over his features. I will, he promised, his voice steady. I'll figure it out, Eve. I don't want to lose you. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. There was still so much unresolved between us, so much pain and confusion, but for the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for us after all. But until then, I would keep my distance. I would protect my heart, no matter how much it hurt. As I watched Jason turn and leave the bathroom, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something new. something that could either break us completely or finally bring us together. In the days that followed, Jason's behavior began to change. He still kept his distance, still struggled with his emotions, but there was a new determination in his eyes. He started coming home earlier, spending more time in the common areas of the mansion where I was likely to be. He didn't force conversation, didn't try to push me into anything, but his presence was unmistakable. And as much as I tried to ignore it, to keep up the walls I had built around myself, I found it harder and harder to resist him. One evening, as I sat in the living room reading a book, Jason walked in and sat down across from me. He didn't say anything, just watched me with that same intense gaze that had always unnerved me. But now, there was something else in his eyes, something softer, more vulnerable. I tried to focus on the book in my hands, but the words blurred on the page, my thoughts too scattered to concentrate. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "Why are you doing this, Jason?" I asked, my voice breaking the silence between us. He didn't look away, his gaze steady. "Doing what?" "Being here," I said, my frustration bubbling to the surface. "You've avoided me for weeks, and now you're suddenly around all the time. What's changed?" He leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees, his expression serious. "You've changed, Eve. You're not the same woman I married, and it's making me realize things I didn't want to see." I frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" "You're stronger than I gave you credit for," he admitted, his voice soft. I thought if I kept my distance, Jason continued, his voice softer now, "I could keep everything under control. Keep you at arm's length, keep myself from getting too close. But I was wrong. You're not just some woman I married for convenience, Eve. You're more than that." His words hung in the air between us, laden with a sincerity that I hadn't heard from him before. My heart pounded in my chest, and I found myself both yearning for and dreading what he might say next. "I see the way you've changed," he said, his gaze never leaving mine. "You've built a life here, even in the midst of all this chaos. You've grown stronger, more determined. And in trying to keep you out, I've realized just how much I need you in my life." I blinked, not sure if I had heard him correctly. For weeks, I had been telling myself that he didn't care, that I was just another part of the arrangement. But now, here he was, admitting that he needed me. It was the validation I had been seeking, but it also scared me, because it meant that my feelings were not as one-sided as I had feared. "Jason," I began, my voice trembling slightly, "if you really feel that way, why didn't you say something sooner? Why did you let it get this far?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair, his frustration evident. "Because I'm a fool, Eve. I thought that by keeping you at a distance, I could protect myself. I've never been good at letting people in. It's easier to push them away, to focus on work, on anything but the feelings I don't want to face. But that's not fair," I said, my voice firmer now. "It's not fair to either of us." "I know," he admitted, his tone laced with regret. "But the truth is, I've been missing you, Eve. I miss the arguments, the way you challenge me, the way you refuse to back down. I miss everything. And I hate that I've pushed you away to the point where you don't want to be near me anymore." His words struck a chord deep within me. For so long, I had been trying to protect myself from the pain of loving a man who might never love me back. But now, here he was, admitting that he had been missing me just as much as I had missed him. It was both comforting and terrifying. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my emotions. "I need to know if this is real, Jason. If you're really willing to let me in, to let yourself care, because I can't keep going through this back and forth. I can't keep being hurt by your indecision." Jason's expression softened, and for the first time, I saw the fear in his eyes, the fear of losing me, of losing whatever it was that we had begun to build together. He leaned forward, closing the distance between us, his gaze locked onto mine. "It's real, Eve," he said, his voice filled with a quiet intensity. "I've been scared and I've made mistakes, but I don't want to lose you. I'm ready to let you in if you'll still have me." The vulnerability in his words broke down the last of my defenses. I could see the sincerity in his eyes, the genuine fear that I might turn him away. And in that moment, I knew that I couldn't keep my heart guarded any longer. "I never wanted to give up on you, Jason," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I've been falling in love with you, despite everything. But I need to know that you're serious, that you're not going to push me away again." He reached out, gently taking my hand in his touch warm and reassuring. "I'm serious, Eve. I don't want to push you away anymore. I want to make this work, for real." Tears welled up in my eyes, a mix of relief and overwhelming emotion. I had been waiting for this moment, hoping against hope that Jason would finally open up to me. And now that he had, I felt a flood of emotions I had been holding back for so long. "I want that too," I whispered, squeezing his hand. "I want us to try." Jason's expression softened further, and for the first time, a real smile touched his lips, a smile that reached his eyes, filling them with a warmth I had rarely seen before. He pulled me closer, his other hand coming up to cup my cheek, his touch gentle and reverent. "I don't know how to do this," he confessed, his voice raw with emotion. "But I'm willing to learn, if you'll help me." I smiled through my tears, feeling a sense of hope that I hadn't felt in a long time. "We'll figure it out together, I promised." And with that, he closed the distance between us, pressing his lips to mine in a kiss that was both tender and full of promise. It wasn't just a kiss. It was a vow, a new beginning, a promise that we would face whatever came our way together. As we pulled back, resting our foreheads against each other, I knew that things wouldn't be easy. There were still challenges ahead, still wounds that needed to heal. But for the first time, I felt like we were truly in this together. "I'm not going anywhere, Eve," Jason whispered, his voice filled with a quiet determination. "Not ever again." And as I looked into his eyes, I believed him. We had been through so much already, but I knew that as long as we faced the future together, there was nothing we couldn't overcome. This wasn't the end of our story. It was just the beginning. And for the first time, I felt truly ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that we were no longer just enduring each other, but finally learning to love each other.